So this is the source of the northern branch of the River Wey, which should look like this. But in fact, it looked like this because of the globally warmed summer of 2022. It wasn't until Christmas that the ducks got their pond back and could swim south for the rest of the winter, which would take them to the King's Pond in Alton, named after a mill owner rather than a majesty. This globally warmed turtle is sunbathing in November. The Wey and its tributaries had more water mills than any other river system in Britain. There are 2 mills here at Needham on the Surrey-Hampshire border. They were used for fulling, which is basically making felt and grinding corn. This is Islington Mill and Host House. It hosted Field Marshal Montgomery as his retirement home. Some towns take their rivers for granted. Farnham really shows them the way. This is a magnificently restored corn mill at Moor Park. This ancient yew tree won Tree of the Year and grows in the grounds of Waverly Abbey. Founded in 1128 as Britain's first Cistercian community, the monks were incredible builders and built several bridges across the Wey that are still in use today. The abbey was suppressed in 1536 along with many others by Henry VIII. We're now at the confluence of the Wey, with the northern branch on the right and the southern branch on the left. These ponds on Blackdown Hill, just south of Hazelmere, comprise the southern source of the River Wey. At 87 miles, the Wey is the longest tributary of the River Thames, and this southern branch is actually longer than the northern branch, but is closer to the mouth. Blackdown is one of the highest hills in southeast England, However, the green sand of which it is made was laid down underwater just over 100 million years ago in the Cretaceous period. This is the A3 Memorial Bridge, which is dedicated to the British and Canadian soldiers that were billeted here in the First and Second World Wars. Much of the land around here is still owned by the MOD. Headley Corn Mill just in Hampshire was in operation well into the 21st century. Wagoner's Wells was probably one of the many artificial mill ponds that feed the Wey. Great Frensham Pond is artificial and was created to provide fish for the Bishop of Winchester. Frensham Farm by Dockenfield Weir contains oast houses. These dried hops that were grown locally to flavour beer, but the local industry died out in the 1920s due to blight. The bridges at Tilford are some of those built by Cistercian monks from Waverly Abbey. They were built in the 13th century, probably after a flooding event. We are now back at the Tilford confluence. Much of the land through which the Wey flows is sandy and acidic and is only useful for pasture rather than arable farming. There are many water meadows, which is good news for wildlife. The mill at Elstead was once occupied by Roundheads, who would be appalled to discover it's now a pub. Another Cistercian bridge. Here the river runs below Pepper Harrow, which has a reputation for being a druidic altar. The pagan ritual of cricket has been played here for centuries. The Wey was incorporated into the GCHQ line, the World War II line protecting London. It was mostly garrisoned by Canadians. This is the very cute village of Eashing. It also has a bridge built by the monks from Waverly Abbey, made out of Bargate stone, as most of these bridges were. That's because Bargate stone is quarried locally. It's a very hard form of green sand of which these hills are made. It forces the river to meander as it pushes through them. This park in Godalming is dedicated to Jack Phillips. He was the wireless operator on the Titanic who failed to pass on 2 iceberg warnings to the bridge, but he went down with the ship, sending SOS signals to the end. Now comes the first of many partings of the ways. The River Wey goes this way, through a housing estate, while the Wey Navigation goes this way. The Godalming stretch of the Wey Navigation was the last to be built. The project to make the Wey navigable was originally begun in the 1600s, with the aim of connecting the Thames to Guildford, which is downstream of here. This generated so much barge traffic that the project was extended to Godalming in 1764. Here at Frankham, the navigation and the Wey meet again. The river then flows past the wildlife-rich water meadows below Farley Hill. Then the waterway splits again. One way loops south, the other way navigates west. The 2 streams merge just above Shalford, where the river is joined by the Wey and Arran Junction Canal, before almost immediately Anna branching again. This is where the River Tillingbourne meets the Wey. The Tillingbourne drains the west side of Leith Hill, so the 2 green sand giants of Leith Hill and Blackdown share their waters. While the river runs wild, the navigation takes a much more serene course. The Wey and the navigation and the branches meet once more just above Guildford. Below the chalk heights at Guildford, the Millmead stream splits from the main course of the River Wey to power the hydroelectric generators at the repurposed town mill. It's more of an environmental than a commercial operation, but it does feed into the national grid and powers bits of Guildford. Guildford's long-established prosperity was based on the wool trade and grain, and it was wool and grain that the Wey Navigation was designed to transport down to the Thames and on to the Port of London. Timber and chalk too, possibly cheese, were loaded up here at the City Wharf, now restored. Other more exotic products followed, such as gunpowder from the mills at Chilworth. Sulphur and coal came the other way, to be unloaded at wharves like this one at Dapdune, preserved by the National Trust. Now we're approaching the oldest part of the navigation, on the left. This is through land owned by Sir Richard Weston. He also built the original Stoke Mill. The current version is a Guildford landmark, but their fire brigade let the original burn down. The old Wey now runs past the A3. The not so old Wey runs parallel but further north. Construction of the first stretch of Sir Richard's navigation began in 1651 and was finished in 1653. It was very profitable, but the profits were eaten up by legal fees following land disputes. The river then Anna branches. Sir Richard had been experimenting with river control around his own estate here in Stoke Park, but he removed himself to the Low Countries to avoid the English Civil War. There he saw the lock systems that inspired him. True to its wayward self, the branches kiss again above Send and then separate. Send is probably a corruption of sand. The village sits on the Bagshot Sands Formation, which was formed 15 million years ago under some shallow seas and rivers. It was the site of a skirmish during the Cornish Rebellion of 1497, but the tin men were later crushed by the iron hand of Henry VII at the Battle of Deptford Bridge. South of Woking, the Wey becomes very wayward indeed and splits into several different streams. We're following the navigation. On one of the islands sits the 12th century Newark Priory. The Augustinian community was dissolved by Henry VIII, but there is still a service held every Easter Sunday at dawn. At Ripley Weir, a fish bypass has been built with a choice of downhill and slalom courses. Below the weir, the river and the navigation diverge again. The Wey flows between the inevitable golf course and the gardens at RHS Wisley. Then submits to the M25. On a side stream sits this mill that was built by the husband of Alice Lovelace, née Byron. Alice wrote the first ever computer programme for Charles Babbage. The Brooklands Concord, too beautiful for economics. There was something Arthurian about watching Concord disappear into the west. Simply awesome. Fallen by the wayside. So this is the bridge over the Wey, up Wey Bridge. Time to follow the navigation. According to the plaque on its wall, this is John Dunn's house at Pyford. Dunn we probably have been because he lived near here rather than in here. A nice place for a pint opposite Pyford Marina. The junction of the Basingstoke Canal with the Wey and Navigation, and below the M25. These flats at Cox's Lock were once the last commercial watermill in Surrey. It closed in 1983. At Wey Bridge, the river and the navigation mix one last time. The final parting of the Weys occurs at the confluence with the River Thames. A western branch is inundated at this weir. The eastern branch gives way in a much more traditional and graceful fashion.